Hello. Today we have another exciting weekly review episode. I will be covering some concepts I learned in Swift since last week, doing code reviews for the apps that I developed as part of 100 Days of SwiftUI course, doing the budget review, and in the last section of the video, I will show you the progress I made on my own app. And there is something to show. Let's do it. I will start with SwiftUI. Mind you, it's not an exhaustive list, but rather some concept that I considered important enough to move forward with learning Swift and my own app. Everything is a view in SwiftUI. The text field, the image symbol, the list, the button. All those are views in the eyes of SwiftUI, and therefore, Swift relies on nesting structure, meaning there are parent and children views, and visuals highly depend on nesting and inheritance of modifiers. This is the most confusing part for me right now. Whenever I apply some modifiers, I cannot predict how it will show up on screen, at least when it comes to shapes. There is for sure some specific pattern behind it, which I will grasp in time, but not quite yet. If I'm correct, SwiftUI supports up to 10 levels of nesting. Moving on. Modifiers. Those are properties that change the look of the views. Font, font size, background color, padding, etc. Sounds easy until you realize that some modifiers are inheritable and some aren't. There are environment modifiers that affect all child views and regular ones that affect one view. Few other observations. Order matters. That I understood already. But the pattern itself? No, not yet. Multiple modifiers can layer on top of each other to increase effect. And local overrides on child view level have priority. Which means I can change font for child view even if environment modifier has different parameters. Next thing I realized, if I am to work on my own app, it will require some data storage. What I was surprised with is to learn that by default, apps do not have persistent storage. That was the first surprise. Second surprise was even less pleasant. As it turned out, the way data model is structured is magnitudes different from what I'm used to in relational databases. I worked with databases a lot. At some point in my life, I was even teaching the SQL course. So I'm quite decent with architecting the databases and SQL itself to query the data. So my assumption was that it will be quite similar. It is not. It is vastly different. As of today, I'm on day 31 in 100 Days of SwiftUI. And so far, Paul hasn't touched this topic. Hopefully, it will become more clear later on. Because right now, and you will see it later in the video, my attempts at data model for my own app were futile. And now to the code review. I will show you the 4 apps I worked with since last week as part of the 100 Days of SwiftUI course. Actually, one of them I forgot to show you last time. So just catching up. Let's start with the app that I forgot about last time. It's called WeSplit. The idea behind the app is that you want to split the check between multiple people, plus you would like to add some tips on top of that amount. One of the tasks that Paul had for this app is to implement conditional modifiers. If tip percentage is 0, highlight text in red, and that's what I did here. But beyond that, exciting part of this app was exposure to Apple frameworks. In this example, we had to get local currency. And as you can see, since I'm based in Czech Republic, it shows up at Czech crowns. Let's see the app. And that's We Split. The second app was Rock, Paper, Scissors. To be honest, this one took the soul out of me. It's the first app that Paul asked us to develop from scratch, from zero, not based on his own code. So naturally, I got lost and didn't know where to start. And that's common occurrence right now. What I'm struggling with is figuring out how to break down functionality into smaller blocks and where to start. So at the moment, I'm driving myself to start with simple parts. What do I know in the beginning? Okay, for example, some variables that I need to create. I start with simple stuff that I understand and then move on to harder parts. As you can see, this app is not the beautiest. It looks actually horrible, but functionality does work. There are a few things that I struggled the most in this app. First one is how to randomize the first round, because Swift would tell me that I cannot do that. I cannot refer to random element. That's what I came up with, and currently it works. I still don't fully understand the logic behind it. And the second part I struggled with is how to write the business logics for the app. That's what I eventually came up with. And I'm sure it's not the best and probably can be done differently and simpler. But also in this app, that's where I learned to start breaking down functionality into smaller bits. And here you can see that I separated functions for new route and game reset into its own functions, which I will be reusing in other apps, but which also helps make code more readable. Let's see how the app works. So currently it tells us to lose against rock, which means we can use scissors. And sure enough, we did lose. Next one, win against rock. So we can use paper. Sure enough, we win. Now let's try do the opposite. Instead of losing against the rock, let's try to win. And so let's choose the paper. Oops, that's incorrect. It works. And now we'll click through the app until the round resets. Oh, and it seems we have a bug here. It hasn't actually reset it after 10th round. Well, I guess now I understand programmers a bit better. There's always something that happens during the demo. Let's move on to Word Scramble app. Basically, the app provides you a random word and you're supposed to guess some words that can be made out of the same letters. In this app, Paul wanted to expose us to Objective-C frameworks, some of the old ones. Honestly, I don't think I understood it fully, how it works. But exciting parts are in this app that I learned the difference, what guard does compared to if, and how to customize the list view. Let's try the app. So we have bankable word. Which other words can we make out of the same letters? I guess we can make bank, and it slides down with animation and also shows you the symbol for the amount of characters. What else can we do here? I guess able, another word, ankle. And so you see, list is populated correctly. It's customized and displays symbol on the left. And as a last challenge, Paul asks to add the score, which I did, and also add button to restart the game if someone wants to change the word. And the last app I worked with is Better Rest. When I saw what we will be doing, I actually got really excited and got tingles, because in this app, Paul actually showed us how to work with Core ML, the machine learning framework from Apple. And I was really excited about the potential possibilities. What can I do that, assuming I have the data? So that was quite fun to work with. Although the app itself is quite easy. You choose when you want to wake up, you choose the desired amount of sleep, and you choose how many coffee cups you took throughout the day. And based on that, it shows you the ideal bedtime to get full night sleep. Based on that machine learning model, let's see the app. So let's say I want to wake up at 7:10. My desired amount of sleep is 8 hours, and I usually drink around 3 cups per day, which means my ideal bedtime is at 10:20. Although model is based on demo data, so don't take it as a fact. Let's move on to the budget review. Another week and I'm still way below the baseline. It's the middle of the month, so I had to incur some personal living expenses. In the comments there was a question related to the budget and what is included. Mainly, it's about giving myself time, the most valuable currency. I waited for this opportunity for 5 years, and I will talk about this more some other time. But it's been a long time, so I wanted to give myself time to learn, to try, and understand if I like it. Of course, I had to make some concessions this year and reduce my expenditures. Unfortunately, I don't live a flashy life, so my expenses are quite low. This week, I decided to do something different and split my week into 2 parts. First 3 days, I continued working through 100 Days of SwiftUI course. Last 2 days, I've decided to try and implement some of those concepts that I learned and prototype the app. But first, the considerations I had for the app were: it should be easy enough for a novice like myself, still challenging but not discouraging, and still attainable. Otherwise, there was a risk to just drop it on the way whenever I encounter some issue that I don't know how to solve. And there are plenty of issues that I'm encountering so far. Second, it should cover basics of programming, Swift and SwiftUI. How to make UI elements, how to work with Apple frameworks, how the data model is architected, and how the CRUD operations work. Third, it should solve some issue that I have. And fourth, it shouldn't bring any additional expenses during the time when I'm actually cutting on those. So no backend, no server expenses. Those were 4 considerations that I had. Being a health-conscious person, but also a person who travels the world, even during COVID, I was constantly on the move. But also a person who is quite risk-averse. I know it's quite hard to believe considering all of that and risks that I'm undertaking, but bear with me. My default mode is being risk-averse. Anyways, so I wanted to make something that will solve my problem, and maybe solve the problem for people from the same target group of health-conscious people. To cut story short, what I decided to do is vaccination tracker, but with a twist. The twist is that it will provide recommendations based on CDC guidelines. I did my research, and none of the apps that are in App Store currently do so. Let's reiterate 4 points I considered. Easy enough? Check. Covers basic programming concepts? Check. Solves my problem? Yes, it does. Doesn't require backend? Check. So that's the idea we'll be working with in the following weeks and months. Mind you, I don't expect it to take a whole year, but that's the idea I chose to start with. Let's see what I did so far. Let's move on to my own app and see the progress that I made since last week. So first, what I focused on is I tried to define data model. But because Paul hasn't mentioned it in his own course yet, It was a big struggle. That's what I came up with so far after a few tries. If someone has any suggestions, I'll be happy to hear them in the comments. What I tried to do is to define enums for diseases, vaccination status, structs for doses and vaccines, and then try to add some demo data for two of those. I'm questioning if this is the way. From what I understood, there are two data frameworks, Core Data and SwiftData. SwiftData was released last year and therefore only supports iOS 17 and onwards, and Core Data is the older one. But I haven't worked with either of those yet, and therefore maybe it can be done easier using those frameworks, which I will be looking into next week. Then the next thing I tried is to prototype onboarding experience that I had in mind. Let's see what I started with and where I ended up with. I tried 3 approaches for the UI. This is the first one. Then the second one that I tried is to have the view that is fed from the array that has data for the view. So all the views are unified. This is the second approach that I tried. But I quickly realized that in this case, I will not be able to customize view if I want some custom elements on some pages. Or if it's possible, it won't be very efficient. And the third approach that I settled on is this one, where I defined multiple pages in a switch statement, and later each view has its own code. Although they're mostly identical, it allows me to customize some of the pages. For example, like this one, where I added accept privacy policy and accept terms and conditions switches. I'm sure I need to optimize that code and actually separate those reusable parts and remove them from views, but for now, that's what I'm working with. And that's all the progress I made so far with my own app. And that's all I had for you for today. Next week, as I mentioned previously, I plan to split my week into 2 parts. First 2 days, I will continue progressing through 100 Days of SwiftUI, and the last 2 days, I plan to apply some of those new learned concepts to my own app. Thank you for joining, and see you next week.